The deadline is fast approaching where I need to take this 43-year-old motorhome, fill it full of all of my heavy stuff, and drive it 2,000 miles across the country, which is a crazy thought considering the level of completion on it. Now, it doesn't matter that the coach is, raw and the body panels on the inside aren't done. And it doesn't even matter that the paint job's not done. The lighting works and the engine is strong. So all that really needs to happen is it needs to be able to drive straight down the road, which means the suspension and the steering and the tires and all that need to be top notch. So that's what we're going to do in this episode. We're going to get this thing driving straight down the road. Let's get into it. I bought this awesome 41-year-old motorhome. It was one of the last to roll off the assembly line in 1978. These GMCs are the best mass-produced motorhome that was ever designed. They are front-wheel drive, low-to-the-ground, air suspension, awesome handling, aluminum and composite construction from the 1970s, way ahead of their time. And even though it runs and drives, there are lots of things to modify, fix, or upgrade. So come along on the journey as we figure out how to Restomod this trans mode into the best damn GMC motorhome ever. This is a self-leveling laser level. I bought this on Amazon for $100, and you guys, it's all I can do to not geek out on this. I want to go off on a rant for 5 minutes about how cool it is that we can buy this stuff for $100 now. But I'll just shorthand it by telling you that when I was in the Navy in 2006, we used one of these that cost $1,500, and that was like a decent one for a decent price at that time. So in like 15 years, these have come down in price more than tenfold. It's incredible. And of course, it's all because of made in China. Now, that's a good thing and it's a bad thing because that means that there are no more Western companies making this. But back in 2006, I'm willing to bet that even that unit, the $1,500 unit, was also made in China at that time. So these jobs went to China a long time ago, and now it's just trickled down to where you and I, the consumers, we don't have to get ripped off anymore, and we can get an awesome tool like this for what I consider it to be a very reasonable price. And nowadays, I would not be without this. Seriously, if you do any kind of construction or work on motorhomes, anything like that, this is an indispensable tool. I can't believe I didn't have one until now, and I am so excited to have this. You don't need to get this brand though. I'm sure there's other brands. This is just the one that I got. Say I have a plumb bob set up here with the string, and the light from the laser level is getting occluded by the string. So that means that this laser level right here completely agrees with gravity. So I'm standing here in the cul-de-sac, and you can see the laser level right there, and I've marked with tape 6 points on the ground where the 6 tires are going to sit. Then using the laser level on this triangular folded piece of paper, I marked the height for each of the wheels. So only the front right wheel is not exactly in position. It's crazy how close those other 3 are. Now, that's measured to the midpoint between the tires there. So it looks like I need to put about a 3/4 inch spacer right up here for the front right wheel. So I'll just use a piece of plywood up there and park the front right wheel on a piece of plywood as I do the alignment job. So you guys, it's the next morning and the crows are infatuated with the tape in the cul-de-sac. In the last video, you guys saw me driving the front wheels of the motorhome up onto these ramps, and that got the wheels here in kind of an extreme situation where this wheel was pushed up and that wheel was pushed down. And just yesterday, I backed the motorhome up. I kind of go over this curb because I like to be up against that edge of the driveway. So I kind of drive over this curb with the driver's side. But anyway, I backed it up to check my tape marks out there in the cul-de-sac and make sure those are set up correctly. They are, it's all good. But doing that into this little depression here at the bottom of the driveway also put those wheels into that extreme condition where this wheel is quite low. So as I was backing out of the driveway, I was hearing this tearing plywood sound. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the sound of plywood breaking, but that's exactly what it sounded like. And I was like, what is that coming from? I heard it both times going in and out of the driveway. So turns out it was the sound of tearing fiberglass. Somehow the strut here has detached at this end, and this rod here is poking a hole in the fiberglass. So that's one more thing that I need to do now, some fiberglass repair. Now, I was already planning on busting into that whole rear suspension and replacing the airbags. Mine are kind of dry rotted. Here's the brand new airbags from Cinnabar. These cost me $400 a piece, so there's $800 worth of rubber. If that's not overpriced, I don't know what is. It makes the quad bag upgrade a lot more attractive. I like that the aluminum is painted black now. That's kind of nice. I don't think it's going to matter when I install these or fix the fiberglass problem and the strut there. But just in case there is some issue, I'm going to do this job first and then the front end alignment second. I have the strut pushed down and out of the way. Here's the problem. Jacking this up from the center between the two wheels actually has the effect of shoving this mount here with the strut closer to the wheel well. So that tire dropping is actually what was causing the damage. It wasn't the tire coming up. So I've got this jacked up really quite high and I'm able to spin this wheel without a problem. But this wheel here still sitting on the ground. And in fact, I think it's the strut back there, which is supposed to lift this up off the ground. Basically, the strut at the end of its travel is supposed to prevent that wheel from dropping any further. Having never disassembled this system before, I can't say that for certain, but I think I'm gonna have to do some funky blocking of the bracketry back behind the wheel there and just try to get that up off the ground so I can remove that wheel and get a better look at what's going on back there. Also, the linkage to the automatic height control valve here is missing. So a previous person who worked on this removed that linkage. There's supposed to be a dog leg that goes from this little rubber bushing back here to this hole. Well, there's no screw in that hole and there's also no rust. And the final thing that I need to check is this pivot point. Getting in here and wiggling it, I can feel a slight bit of play. I'm talking like, yeah, it's tiny. It's just the ever so small amount of like click, click, click. So that is nothing to worry about. That is good news. Something doesn't look right here. I wonder what it could be. I didn't put a wrench on that. Did you? How's that happening? So I took this whole crazy stud assembly off the Bogey here on this side, just because I wanted to see what was going on with a complete assembly. And it's got this nut here with these depressions. You see how that was sort of like mashed after the nut was created? And that makes what's called a Type C nut. And you can see the damaged thread. And whoever installed this nut here was trying to put a lock nut on there, but this is what's called a nylock nut. There's this nylon insert here that does grip the threads and prevent backing off, although it's not a very high strength lock. It just sort of prevents the vibration backing off effect. But this nut here is much higher profile. You see the post is not long enough to have any of the threads engaging with the nylon lock ring. We're trying to maintain the low profile to avoid collisions with the sidewall of the tire. So this is absolutely an inappropriate nut to be using. Well, I went down to the hardware store and this is the Type C nut that they sell down there. It is the same profile, the same thickness, although it looks a little bit different. So it'll do the job. And because I got one new nut for this position here, I figured why not get all new nuts for both sides for this side here, which is also a Type C nut. And yeah, I spent a pretty penny, $15.35. So now I just need to remove all the studs here, clean the rust off the threads, and just sort of refurbish these before installing the struts. You can see the reason here why I'm replacing these airbags. See all the dry rot? See all the cracks? It also looks like there's some mold growing in there, which is crazy. But anyway, these bags will still function quite nicely as backup in case I do pop an airbag, like if some random piece of debris cuts this or something like that. I will always have a solution in the motorhome with me so I can get on down the road. I ordered 4 new struts for the back here from Summit Racing, and they came in the mail yesterday. I actually paid for the expensive 2-day shipping, which is so unlike me. I never pay for expensive shipping, but I'm in a big hurry because we're trying to move away, so I didn't want to be waiting for these to arrive potentially, I don't know, next Friday or something like that. So they actually got here yesterday, and it's time to install them at the same time as replacing the airbag. And this is fantastic because these new struts come with new studs as well, but the nuts in the bag here do not appear to be Type C. I could maybe put them on with some red Loctite. So comparing the old airbag to the new one, we can see my $400 piece of rubber. We can see that the metal cones are identical. I think they came out of the same mold. I think that, Cinnabar bought this mold for this piece right here from Firestone, who used to make this mold. And this part doesn't even go bad. So they don't even need to send this. So in effect, I paid $400 just for a chunk of rubber. I should call up Air Ride and see if they'll make just this part for us. First, you take the cones off the airbag and you fully extend it like this. Now install the cone and the nut on the Bogey on just this side with the air input. Install the cone on the other side with the nut there just floating in space. Fight with the airbag until you get it sort of turned inside out into this position, then take the nut off and feed it through the hole here. Okay, so during installation, I just now nicked this black piece on the threads there and it chipped off the paint. You guys, this is very cheaply applied paint. I can absolutely feel the texture there, which means that constantly rubbing during the activation of the suspension here, constantly rubbing on that paint chip, probably going to wear a hole in my $400 piece of rubber. I cannot speak lowly enough of this $400 part from Cinnabar. All right, I've sanded this smooth. Let's try it again. So once you get it to this point, you have to act quick, unscrew the nut and get this into the hole and get the nut on those threads that are popping through the hole. You have to do all that before this pops the cone out. Pop the dust caps off of the rear brakes here, and I'm seeing nice fresh grease. So it looks like Dan did a good brake job here, but I'm gonna take this one apart just to double check. Yeah, that's a brand new bearing and a brand new spindle with lots of brand new grease, so he did that part right. The brake pad looks very new. That's a decent looking brake cylinder there, so it's got a little rust on it. It might be, I don't know, it's definitely a replacement. It's not original, but it looks good, and he's got some new springs in there. His job looks pretty good here. So this is the same kind of a setup as you find on trailer brakes, and you know, it's been quite a few years now that trailer brakes come standard with a Zerk fitting that pokes out the front here, so you can re-grease the bearings without having to take the whole thing apart down to this level. And it sure would be nice if the GMC had that feature. Maybe there's some way to add it. Well, I got the airbags completely installed, but the kit with the airbag did not come with new hardware here for the airlines. So this, unfortunately, is leaking. We can see the air bubbles here in a second. Soapy water does magic to figure out where leaks are coming from. And we can tell that the place that's leaking here is the place where the plastic insert threads into the metal of the new airbag. Let me bring you guys up to speed. You can see I've got a 2x4, and that sits between the frame and the ground back here. So these two blocks, this one and that one, are the same height. And you guys see the laser line, everything is good here in the back. The reason we block this up is because the airbags could lose pressure as we're doing the alignment job, but this keeps everything perfect. But there's still a significant portion of the weight of the motorhome being held by the airbags. Now up here at the front, it's a different story, and I made a mistake the other day. See, this mark right here is the front right. That's the tape right there, and that's basically more or less the mark for in here that we're going to measure the frame height. Okay, so right front low, left front exactly at the same height as the back of the motorhome. So I thought that meant we need to add 3/4 of an inch of plywood under this wheel, but that's exactly backwards. If this mark is reading low, it means that this tire is high. So what we need to do is drop that wheel 3/4 of an inch, but we cannot do that because I'm not going to be able to like dig out any of this asphalt or anything like that. So what I've done is I've moved the motorhome forward, so the wheel now sits in a different spot, and I went under there just now and measured the front left wheel and the front right wheel, still about 3/4 of an inch away from each other, but the good news is that they straddle the rear, so they basically kind of split the difference there. And so what I'm going to do is block up the front left so that these two are now matched and they're the same height, and the motorhome will basically be about 3/8 of an inch higher at the front than it is at the back for my alignment job, and I will compensate for that a little bit with my measurements at the frame. So I've made these little gauge sticks, front left, front right. I've got this nice thick plastic bag that one of the rolls of filament for my 3D printers came inside of. Splash a little motor oil inside of it. So you can see a bag just like this is already underneath the driver's side tire. I'm going to put this one onto the passenger side tire, and I'll be able to turn those wheels with minimal resistance from the ground. With the plywood under that wheel, we can see the laser line is right there at the rim where the rim meets the tire, and over here it's in almost the exact same position. One thing I want to show you guys is this digital angle gauge on the rim here At the top of the rim, we get an 89.5 negative camber measurement. But down here at the bottom, we get a 90 degree or 89.9 depending. So I need to average those two readings, which means that the actual camber of this wheel is 89.75 degrees. So I've got this piece of tape on the steering wheel, and if I turn it all the way to the left, that's one turn, and then just shy of 3/4 of a turn, and we're running into the bump stop. If I go this side, we go one complete turn and just shy of 3/4 on the bump stop. So with the tape at 12 o'clock now, my steering rack is perfectly centered. I had a problem with the steering wheel moving while I was doing the adjustments, and that's my fix right there. So it's jammed into the seat hard enough to where it's not moving the steering wheel anymore. So you can see I've got the string line set up between the jack stands, and that sits exactly 26 inches off of the outside of the frame measured underneath the motorhome there. So this board here measures 12 3/4 inches across, and it was cut on a table saw, which means that this edge and this edge are perfectly parallel to one another. When I hold it flat up against the rim, you can see that it just intersects with the string line here. This side is dialed in perfectly. Time to go to the other side. It's funny the way the turnbuckle threads work. Here on the passenger side, my rule is up and out 'em. Up and out 'em. So if you're grabbing the wrench from low and you're going up, and keep in mind I'm underneath the bumper here, so I'm pulling up, and that's how I go toe out. So I get the front of the wheel here to go outwards by going up and out 'em on the driver's or on the passenger side, and over there on the driver's side it's down and out. So down and out drivers, up and out 'em passenger. All right, I'm sure you guys are wanting to know how it is that I knew how to do an alignment on my motorhome. Well, full disclosure, I've never done an alignment job before. It seems to have worked out quite well, but I learned how to do it from Machines of Loving Grace. So this lady, Grace, whatever her last name is, she made the whole write-up here that I followed, and I distilled down her instructions. I also went and did a little more research, and I kind of just boiled it down to what you see here, just a play-by-play. Why did I do this instead of just paying a professional to do the alignment? I mean, they have like lasers and all that kind of fancy stuff, right? Well, the reason is because I called the alignment shop, and they're like, that rig is too big for us to put on our alignment rack, and they have a special guy that they call and schedule an appointment with, and he does the alignment on their alignment pad for big rigs. So they just have a very flat pad of concrete there at the alignment store, and then they're going to charge me hundreds of dollars for some guy to do the same thing that I'm going to do out there in the cul-de-sac. Still stay away. Dangerous moment.
Can I get that?
Yes, please. Let's get the job done.
Yeah, let's get the job done, boy.
This last one's going to require a wrench, dude. Here, I'll get you a wrench, and we can do it with a wrench.
No.
Yeah, it needs a wrench, kiddo. The drill isn't strong enough right now. It's out of batteries. Here's a wrench. We'll do it a different way. Ready? It's the same socket here. Okay, we're going to put this beside. We're going to put this on it. Yeah, I'm going to let you do it. So I need you to put this into the hole. There you go. Push it in until it clicks. Push it right here until it clicks. Keep going. There we go. Now it clicked. Now you go. Yep, there you go. And in fact, you can go back and forth. Here, click. Hey, whoa. Keep going. Actually, you can probably get it by hand now. Yeah, we're going to need to move your foot out of the way so it doesn't get squished. So put them there and then count them. We need 8. Do we have 8?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8. We do have 8, yes. Okay. Ready? Set. Go. Whoop, all out of batteries. I can hear it.
Come here. Come here.
Right against it. That's the easy way. It does not do anything. You want my help? Here, I'll help you a little bit. Good, you can use your fingers now. Yay, all done! And here's my brand new tires installed on the rims it didn't make sense to drive the motorhome down to the tire store because they were just going to jack it up in their parking lot. No different than I do sitting here in the driveway. So 2 trips it took me to the tire store. I got those 4 done last week and then these 2 done today. But I created a problem here at the back because I was not gentle getting these installed. And you can see the brake drum sits just inside the rim. So as I was putting that on, I knocked a weight off. I think I knocked it off of this tire and I knocked a weight off of the other side as well, which means my wheels back here are going to be out of balance and that sucks. So now I got to take them off again, take them back to the shop and get them rebalanced. As I was test driving around the neighborhood this morning, I heard a which got worse and worse the more I braked. And you can see here the damage that was done to the brake caliper. Very little damage done to the rim. So I just need to hit this with the grinder and give myself some extra clearance. The way that brake calipers work, as the brake pad gets worn out and gets thinner and thinner, the caliper moves further and further inboard. So if I can get the problem solved now, I won't have a problem in the future either. Well, you can see I've gotten fairly aggressive with the grind here, and the reason for that is because I don't want any collision to happen, and that rim can flex quite a bit. Rims flex more than you know, so the more clearance, the better. Putting the caliper here from the corner, the inside corner, to my grind gets me 16.34 millimeters. And right across here, where the real meat of the caliper is, 16.32. So we're doing just fine. I haven't actually lost any strength in the caliper by doing this. So this is the stock dog bone that connects the lever arm on the height control switch to the Bogey right here. And yeah, it just bolts in like that. Well, you can see that these bushings are pretty bad. They're not doing so great. And also, I don't really understand why they're like this. They've got to both pivot and flex. This design doesn't make sense to me, but worse than that, on the other side, this part is completely missing. So I need to fabricate at least one of these to match, and so I thought I'd do a little bit better. I came up with this design. It was 3D printed in a single go. It's made out of carbon fiber impregnated polycarbonate. So polycarbonate is a super tough plastic, and it's chemical resistant to oil and grease. So this should hold up nicely in the environment back here by the tires. And you can see I 3D printed. I didn't have to assemble anything. This is the way that it came off the 3D printer. So it's got a universal ball joint in there to make up for any sort of slop in the arms. So that's fixed. It's got a little bit of play on it, which means the universal joints are doing their job and there should be no binding, but I've got another problem. There's a fault in the valving. So on this side, the driver's side, the airbag is not able to let air out. It can only inflate, it can't deflate. And that's gonna have something to do with all this. I think these are solenoids, I don't know. It's a puzzle. Well, these airbags are doing a really good job holding air. It's been several days and the motorhome isn't drooping at all or anything like that. So my solution to the problem was to just wrap that plastic fitting with a whole bunch of Teflon tape, and it seems to have done the trick. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I bought an insurance policy. So if at any point during the trip it goes wrong and I have a failure back here, I can install this. This fitting right here plugs into the airbag. This right here is a Schrader valve, so I can fill the airbag up from any old bicycle pump or gas station air compressor. And then this fitting here connects to the line, which allows me to fill up from the air compressor inside the motorhome. This is a ball valve, so once the airbag is inflated to the correct pressure, I can just lock the ball valve off like so, and there's really almost no way that this can drain down. It's going to take months and months and months for this to lose air. Let's talk about these assemblies of fittings here. I paid $53 for those assemblies from Premier Rubber. That's a brick and mortar store here in Portland, Oregon. $53. And that seems a little bit expensive for just 2, assemblies of brass. But hey, I guess that's the price that I have to pay to go and get service that day. Brick and mortar. Like I said, I walked in, they have a customer service counter. They had a guy who walked me around the store who helped me solve my problems. It was, that's how it goes. We all know that brick and mortar is more expensive than mail order. You get it cheaper on Amazon, right? You get it cheaper on eBay. So it's crazy that this mail order company is charging $80 for the same thing. Okay, in fairness, they've got 2 extra 45-degree fittings. So that's $15 per fitting? I don't think so. Plus, you have to factor in shipping. Look, they also have the missing dog bones for $33. No thanks, I think I'll 3D print a solution for $2. But they do have replacement solenoids for the electro level system, which is something I'm going to need if I want to get the stock setup back to being fully functional. Look at these crazy prices though. I think this is per solenoid, $75, $110. There's like 8 solenoids per side. That's like 16 total solenoids that I might need to replace. That would be $1,600 to get the electro level working. This is crazy town. It's funny because it used to be that working on American-made vehicles meant you weren't going to spend as much money on price. I remember being a kid and hearing my parents' friends say, oh, don't get a BMW because you're going to pay out the nose for maintenance and to buy parts. Well, I'm paying way more than anybody ever paid for a Volkswagen or BMW part for these GMC parts now. I guess that's just the way it is when you're trying to drive an antique, but there's got to be a better way. Let's go for a drive.
This is so exciting.
Oh, like a dream, you guys. It's like driving a Cadillac. Right down that road is where I filmed the intro video, the very first video with this motorhome. All right, well, I just picked up my dinner and it's time to drive back home. The thing is handling quite nicely. Little torque steer, you guys, I can feel it. Pedal to the metal, 60 miles per hour uphill, and that steering is drifting a little bit to the right. When I'm under acceleration though, it seems to be driving in a straight line. That belt sound, I think it's a belt sound, it's intermittent. Comes on and then it goes away. All right, well, I just picked up my dinner and it's time to head back home. That noise that I couldn't figure out was coming from the seat. Well, you guys, I had all the confidence that I could get an alignment job done. And in fact, it was about as difficult as I thought it was going to be when I first started. When I first ran through the instruction set provided by Machines of Love and Grace that read up on the internet, it seemed straightforward. I just followed the steps one by one. And hey, it looked perfect as far as alignment and caster or camber was perfect. Everything looked great. Got on the road and it pulled to the right. My right, pulled to the right, pulled to passenger side, and that was upsetting. I got home, I measured everything, and everything looked perfect. And then I remeasured caster. So if you go through the steps sequentially, what you're going to do is mess up your caster when you're adjusting your camber. Well, that's not good. So you basically want both sides to match. And as it turns out, you want to set the caster for maximum. So passenger side caster was the problem. So I set the passenger side caster for maximum and then got camber reasonable. And then I went over here to the driver's side and I adjusted caster and camber together. It's a multivariable problem. So when you change one, the other one changes. So there's kind of some thinking that goes along with it. And well, the long story short is that I've got the thing tracking, driving straight down the road now. I can take my hand off the steering wheel and it drives straight for quite a long time, even up at speed. And hey, that's a good thing. So I'm gonna call it ready. Everything is torqued down to spec. I think it's ready to load full of stuff and get it on down the road. So that makes me very relieved, very happy. And there's a lot of small jobs still left to do to it before I can actually get on the road. But they're small and I can just start clipping them off one by one. And I need to do that because, tomorrow morning, right about the time that this video releases, my son is going to be getting on an airplane with his grandmother and flying to the Midwest. And that is kind of scary. My wife and I have not ever been away from our son for more than one night. So it's going to be like 10 days maybe without him. So we're pretty anxious to get on the road, which means I've got a fire under my butt. and I need to stop talking to you all and get back to work. So big thank you, as always, to the Patreon supporters. These are the guys. If you like this video, there's a whole playlist starting from the beginning, telling you the whole story of the motorhome. And if you want to support me like the other Patreon supporters, that's the link to do that. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.